Mhm.
Here we go. We begin in three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special extra stream. It's Friday night, and Austin and I usually pop in on this evening and do something for you. Tonight, instead of a commentary or a marathon or anything, we're going to do something akin to an extra Captain Logan show. Austin, welcome to whatever this program is. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's Friday night. I feel all right. Let's go.
Tonight we're going to make some lazy content for you, talking about lazy content. We want to ask the question, this will be kind of like an old school GNN, Austin, just kind of exploring a topic. This is a thing that's been on my mind quite a bit lately with podcasting and YouTubing. The question tonight is podcasting, just on the face of it, lazy content? And I don't know about you, Austin. I've been seeing this comment pop up a lot more lately on things. And as I said when I pitched this on the Captain Logan show last night, not necessarily so much on our stuff, but with a lot of YouTube channels that maybe used to do more scripted content and now have gotten to more of a raw, off-the-cuff, more laid-back sort of format. And also with reaction videos and things like that. So like I'm seeing this from kind of two ends. The first end is people that have done YouTube content or internet content in general, content creators, influencers, what have you, doing this stuff for a long time that have started, kind of changing the way they do things and not putting, at least in the minds of some people, as much effort into it. And then also people coming in for the first time, just trying to get noticed, and in the minds of a lot of people, not working hard enough at it. So I kind of want to explore every avenue of this, Austin. Have you been seeing that as much as I have?
Yeah, like certain creators, I think, are just kind of swamped by that criticism. Like you get channels, say like H3H3, for example, where they did more like, you know, kind of like crazier, like comedy stuff, and now they do like just mostly podcasting. And you see a lot of people be like, ah, well, their podcast sucks. Like this is just lazy content, but it makes money, so that's what they go for.
I'm not familiar with that channel, but I have, of course, been seeing that quite a bit with Cinemassacre's new podcast, James Rolfe, AVGN. He and the Screenwave guys have been doing a podcast lately, and they've been getting a lot of criticism for just coming in with kind of no plan at all and not being charismatic enough to get away with that, interesting enough to just come in with no topic of conversation, no format or anything. And I think honestly with that particular show, the criticism is kind of warranted. I haven't listened to an entire episode of that, but I've listened to some of the snippets that they've put up about that, with that show, and I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of substance here. I can't even tell how much anybody really wants to be here. And in a case like that, I can kind of understand the criticism of, well, if you're not really passionate about it, and you don't and you don't really care about what you're talking about in the first place, you don't even know what you're talking about, you don't even have any kind of plan, not even like meticulous notes or like a real rigid format, but just we're going to sit down and talk into microphones and hope anybody, pays attention to us. Or some people feel like, in the case of somebody like James Rolfe, who is legitimately famous, that there's almost like this. And I don't want to, kick James Rolfe in the face too much, because, I really like that guy, and I think he's still making some good content. In this particular case, I don't think the content is great, and I think that it's I can sort of understand the criticism of it. It seems like you're a little entitled, that you expect anybody to show up just because it's you, even if you're not really, you don't really have the content. and content is first and foremost. That's more important than format. It's more important than structure. It's well, I mean, and obviously content, the structure and stuff is part of the content. But what I mean is, it's more important than the apparatus. It's more important than it visually looking and looking great, or it audibly sounding great. You'll have a lot of channels that'll have all the production stuff there, but then there's just nothing to it. And so I think in that particular case, it's people holding James Rolfe and those guys to what they feel like is their own standards in the first place.
I think with Cinemassacre too, like a lot of people don't really like the Screenwave people, so I wonder if they had tried to make a podcast maybe like 5 years ago, and it was like Mike, James, maybe like Bootsy or somebody, like just those guys kind of talking, like if it would maybe be a bit more accepted.
I also think it would have been better.
Yeah, just like, just friends hanging out.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Just that kind of thing.
I think a lot of people do enjoy, raw content that feels like just some friends sitting around talking with you, and like you're part of that club. But I think that sometimes people that are criticizing these kinds of podcasts aren't necessarily articulating it right. I don't think they're really saying what they mean. When people say podcasts are lazy, I think what they really mean is your podcast feels lazy because there isn't anything to it, or it isn't any good to me, or there's no substance there. But like, I really resist the idea that if anybody sits down in front of a microphone without too much of a plan, it's automatically bad or lazy. Or if it is lazy, is it a problem that it's lazy? Like, if they're really good at it, maybe that's okay. Like, Eric was absolutely lazy when he was making videos. He came in with no plan at all, except I watched a thing, I thought some about the thing, he kind of maybe had a little bit of an idea of what he was going to say when he would come in, but he didn't write anything down. He didn't know for sure what he was going to say when he started recording, but he was good at it, so nobody cared. Nobody was like, hey, well, now you're not doing this correctly. You didn't write anything down. Nobody cared that he had just a picture up on the screen and you never saw his face and he wasn't putting up screenshots or anything, because he was good at it. So like, clearly there's an important component here of whether or not a person is talented. Like, talent is important.
Yeah, this isn't exactly podcasting, but like the kind of idea that you like start from one content and then go to another that's maybe like easier to do.
Yeah.
But you have something like, say, Oni Plays, where originally they were animators on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't really, like, it's not a great place for animators, because you got to hit that algorithm of doing like as much content as possible and as long as possible, and that's not something that's easy to do for animation.
That's a really good point.
So they went from that to like game videos, where they would just like, they would get like their friends and they would just hang out and they would kind of like do improv and stuff and just joke around with each other. And I think that content is really worthwhile, even though it's definitely easier to make than their animation. But that's like an example of like, they're just really good at what they do, and it makes that content worthwhile.
Well, yeah, I mean, what about Red Letter Media? Guys that, or a channel anyway, that got really popular because of lengthy but scripted reviews, really polished, complex stuff that took months and months to create, but they get 1 million plus views on videos that are off the cuff and still certainly heavily edited, but very often with almost no plan. There's a format. There's certainly an initial subject of conversation. But, I mean, the whole point, the whole idea, the whole joke with Half of the Bag was, we didn't plan this. We watched a movie and sat down and talked about it, and those get millions of views on videos. And obviously, more often than not, channels can't pull that kind of thing off. There are very few channels on YouTube that are getting millions of views on that kind of unscripted content, I think. But that just goes to show you that like talent and also purpose is really important.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And
Like they
I mean,
cultivated that over a long period of time. So I mean, there's a
oh,
lot of people that really misplink it and wish that was all they did, but they've won a lot of people over on that format because they have a number of other shows that they do very consistently
mhm.
that are
Yeah.
really really fun and amusing and not like anything else anybody is doing on the internet.
Yeah, that's like one of the interesting things with Red Letter Media is like how they only just hit 1 million subscribers like last year, and yet they're probably the most influential like reviewing YouTube channel there is. Like everybody, kind of takes from that when they do YouTube reviews. And yeah, and then obviously, you can't just do Plinkett over and over. Those take a lot of time to do. And Best of the Worst basically is a podcast where they're just talking for an hour and a half or so about just three terrible movies. But those guys are all just interesting and funny in their own way.
And I think it helps that it has a visual component that where it's kind
Mhm.
of necessary to look at the screen. So it
Yeah, for that
justifies
one, yeah.
itself as a YouTube video. And it feels more like an actual video, even though it's long. I mean, it feels like a broadcast program to some degree, as opposed
Mhm.
to a thing frankly, a lot of what we make, where it's like the only reason there's a video component is because we're on YouTube and we can put a camera on ourselves, but you might as well listen to this as a podcast.
Mhm. Yeah, you want to see lazy content? It's called My Lighting.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of different standards and expectations on YouTube specifically. Let's just talk about that for right now. It's gotten really complicated, like you said, because of the algorithm. Like, I'm really glad you brought that up, because if your goal is to get noticed and possibly make some money or make a living with this platform, then I'm sorry, there's no way around to some degree gaming the system. And like as I've always said, you want to try to walk the line and find a balance where you're making something that you're excited about, that you're passionate about, that you would, depending on what it is, that you might want to actually sit down and watch. I hesitate saying that because, like I've always said, I really enjoy like game streams, and I will do game streams. I don't love watching them, but there are people that will watch that, so I don't mind creating it. But you have to find that balance where you're really enjoying what you're doing, but it's also viable in a monetary way. And so yeah, you have to be strategic, you have to be stealthy. And if I had to wholesale live on this, I mean, this is my full-time job, but I've always been real transparent about this. I don't make enough with YouTube where even if I was on my own, I could fully live on it. Like, I would have to get a second job. I'm at a place these days where I could about pay a mortgage. That's exciting. But like, it's my full-time job in that like, I do make some money with it, and it's substantial enough for my life and my living. And I, except for lately because I have twins now, I was doing it 40 hours a week. But where I'm going with this is, if I had to full stop live on this and support my family with it, I would be gaming the system more. I would absolutely have to. I would be putting out more content. I would be focusing a lot more on scripted stuff, because I know that I could have, and it might be too late now for me, honestly, but if I had been consistently putting out like 15, 20-minute rewinds weekly all this time, a lot of folks, and I agree with this, have said you'd be well past 100,000 subscribers by now. I think that's probably right. If you go back and look at the numbers that show used to get versus where it's at now and where the content we're putting out is now, but the bread and butter now monetarily isn't ad revenue. So it hasn't made as much sense for me with, where I'm at personally, to do that. And so like right now I can actually make a little bit more revenue doing this kind of off the cuff stuff. And if I had more time, and also if I just absolutely had to try to beef up the interest, I would certainly be putting out more scripted stuff. And I love doing the scripted stuff. But what I'm saying is, for a lot of people, it has kind of been necessary just to get content out. And you don't want to have that attitude. Because I bet some people are going to listen to this and be like, oh, okay, so you really are just lazy now. Like, you're not putting out the rewinds the way we used to love them because it's easier to do the other thing. And, like, that's half true, right? Like, I think a lot of people are sort of in this boat now where you do what makes sense for like where you're at in your life now, but also with the way YouTube has changed. Like, I have like 3 different revenue streams now, and if it was all ad revenue, I would be like forcing myself unrealistically to put out content that I'm not putting out right now. And so it's I don't know, it's just the game has changed a lot. But anyway, I'm getting rambly. All I mean is, I think to some degree you have to game the system if you're going to actually make this thing work for you as a career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, there's certain types of content that YouTube really just doesn't adhere to, like animation, for an example.
And these days, kid stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some...
You just can't even do that anymore.
Yeah, because there's some, like, messed up stuff with, like, kids' content that was going on.
And that whole thing was really unfortunate. I feel really bad for those channels that just can't even monetize anymore.
Oh yeah, for like the more legitimate stuff.
Yeah, for legitimate YouTube channels where people were making a living putting out like really good, wholesome content for children, and the kinds of stuff, I'm going off the rails, but the kinds of stuff that the mainstream market isn't making, that like we desperately kind of need. And I don't know, it's really sad. And hopefully those channels, because I haven't looked deeply into a lot of those guys, but hopefully they've got good Patreons, because that's what it would take for them to be able to continue to monetize. I mean, essentially the world has become PBS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're funded by viewers like you. We're there as well. When, Austin, because I'm saying that podcasting inherently, like, just because it's not scripted, just because you don't come in with bullet points, just because you're, and again, different people, you come to things for different things. I learned a long time ago that people actually do like some raw content, and that some people started watching me more when I started doing less scripted stuff, because some people just don't like being read at. This is a thing I've learned. Vince mentioned this to me once. He was like, my wife probably would have never listened to Superhero Rewind. Not that she's into superhero movies anyway, but he said like a thing like that because she doesn't like to be read to. Like, that's really interesting. So like some people really enjoy the more kind of like reality of YouTube, where it's not about a person with a persona so much as it is, and we all have personas to some degree. We all wear masks, but the idea that you have a person that is more or less who they are in real life and IRL, and is just exploring an idea. And yeah, maybe there's going to be some fluff. Maybe it takes them a little while to get to points. Maybe they say every so often. But it can be really interesting to see a person come to realizations, have epiphanies on camera, just as much or more so sometimes than watching a person fully prepared come in and give a lecture. So I don't think it's fair to say wholesale a podcast is lazy, but you and I'm sure, Austin, have both listened to podcasts or watched videos where we went, wow, that's lazy. So when is it lazy? When is it lazy to the degree of self-sabotage?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I agree with your sentiment though on it doesn't necessarily have to be all like put together for it to be good. Like the H3H3 one, like I said earlier, I think that one they keep like notes of like, okay, we're gonna do this, 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 and this, and then you'll get stuff like they had the comedian Bill Burr on for an episode, and that interview is extremely awkward. It's like disastrous. It's terrible. Um,
Was it just because he hadn't been on podcast before, or because they didn't have planned questions, or
no, they have it all like jotted out. It's just that like they're awkward, like they're not good interviewers and
oh,
stuff, and it's just that kind of a thing. And like they're not really like working off each other that well.
well, and
Which is kind of ironic.
if you don't have the right rapport with a guest, sometimes that can
Exactly.
be disastrous.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
exactly.
also, that's a skill that takes time to cultivate for a
Hmm.
lot of people, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of people aren't natural interviewers.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's a place though I said to you when you brought up this topic to me, where I think podcasts are kind of taking over the late night thing, where so much of late night, you bring the guest on, and I mean, I think we all know that late night exists to promote things in the first place, but like you'll get say like Jimmy Kimmel, he'll get like Robert Downey Jr. will come on, and they're clearly just working off a script that was already pre-planned, and then it's like, oh, by the way, go see Avengers. Well, you have people like it's like Joe Rogan or someone like that that they just talk to their guests, and like that's what Conan O'Brien's doing now. He got out of the late show game, and now he's doing podcasting.
And a lot of that was because he was getting a lot more play with clips on YouTube.
Hmm.
Not as many people were watching his entire show. So he was like, well, I might as well be. Because they were having to gear the show. As I understand it, they were having to gear that show too much for the YouTube clips anyway. So he was like, I might as well just make that.
Well, that's another weird thing, which is late night in general, is that late night like 100% plays the algorithm,
Yeah, and like it's a
and it's just
relic of an old of an earlier time, right? And it's kind of pretending like that's still what people want in the evenings, but then it knows that what people are really looking for is those real quick 3 5 minute kind of happy meal clips of a host singing with a celebrity, karaoke in a car or something.
yeah, yeah. And for that kind of thing, I don't care about any of that stuff. Like what I like from old late night is when Norm Macdonald would come on Conan and he would just like trash the other guest, like the chairman of the board bit, where it's like clearly he's just going off the rails.
Those things were always more fun when they would go off book or when you could tell that there wasn't really a plan or a script. And that's why, I mean, you have to keep improvisation in mind in comedians and I don't know, just hosts that are really good at that kind of thing in the first place. Like some people are just naturally interesting,
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
saying whatever comes to mind. Not everybody is good at that. And so I think it gets, going back to the initial topic, I mean, I think it gets really complicated and you have to kind of just look at, evaluate it on a case by case basis. Like, is this person really playing to his strengths? Like if James Rolfe and the guys from Screenwave all get together and try to do like something like the Joe Rogan show or a Howard Stern or something, they don't have the rapport. They don't seem like they like even really hanging out together that much. They're not buddies that like hang out on the weekends. It doesn't seem like. It seems like that's kind of a business arrangement in the first place, and so they're not gelling. But like James Rolfe just did one on his own, just interviewing a guy who has a band, and I listened to a little bit of that, and it's much better. Like it seems like if he seems to be an okay interviewer. It seems like what that show should be maybe is him just bringing in people he's interested in talking to. But I also think that part of the reason that's better is because he seems like he wants to be there. That's a thing he was excited to go and do, and so some of it is that person playing to their strengths, and and some of it is just like how infectious is their enthusiasm.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of like a spin-off from Red Letter Media. I don't know if you've ever seen Rich and Jack had like their own channel for a while. It
Was
was like a
that like a
gaming
game
thing.
thing? Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't watched any of that, but I knew
Um,
he had a
I've
gaming
only
channel.
really watched the Jay episodes, like when he comes on, because they're like immensely more interesting.
Is that because Jay doesn't know anything about video games, or
It's both that and he just like talks about movie stuff that he likes, and they bring him on for a lot of like horror games, so he like kind of talks about that. Like the Friday the 13th, the ones that they do are really interesting because he talks a lot about those movies, and he's got some interesting stories and stuff to tell.
boy, that guy's got his niche.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Um, and then, of course, we should talk about the fact that there's just a lot of different kinds of content. I think sometimes people like to hold one thing to a standard that's not the thing that it is. Like when a person goes, "Oh, podcast isn't a YouTube video." Yeah, that is true. But YouTube also allows you to post things of any length, and it's a platform that allows for podcasting. So if a person wants to put up an hour and a half long podcast and have a video component to it, but you can just listen to it, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's really weird to go, well, I'm here for 10-minute long video essays. And if you make a podcast and not a video essay, you're lazy. And what you really should be doing is meticulously planning and writing a thing. And I'm like, there are people who are good at podcasting that are interesting to listen to for hours on end that are terrible writers that I would never want to see attempt to do that. Like, you
Yeah,
gotta.
they're two different skills.
They're different things. And some people are good at both, but like they're two completely different things. And so to go, well, that's not a YouTube video. Yeah, that's true, but YouTube is a versatile platform that allows for all of those things.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And both like types of content have their like pros and cons. Absolutely. And like you said, just you can be good at either or. Like just because you're good at writing a video doesn't mean you're natural on camera for a podcast, and vice versa.
I mean, communication is also important, and stating intent, I think, matters. So if you come into a thing and. Because I think these channels also exist. When you have people that like to pretend like they're more planned and focused and polished than they are, but what they're really making is podcasts. I can see why people have issues with that, where it's like just come in and say what you are and make it clear the thing that you're making. Another thing I think people discount when they complain about lazy content is content intended for a pre-existing audience versus content that you're putting out into the ether hoping to bring in a much larger base with it. Like people think that everybody's goals are the same. When I do an episode of the Captain Logan show, I don't necessarily expect that that's bringing in new people. Like nobody that's not already watching the show knows who Captain Logan is. So I mean, if we're doing an interesting topic or we're talking about like trailers or something that just came out, maybe that will attract a new person or two. But when I start talking about channel stuff or like life stuff that my audience is knows about and is familiar with, and I might be completely leaving those guys out. When you looked at episode 186 of a show, you should that's a Q&A show, you should probably expect that kind of thing. But if I'm making an unscripted superhero rewind, I'm not necessarily expecting only my audience to be listening to that. So of course I'm not going off on tangents about my kids and my dogs. I'm talking about the movie, but I'm also making it really clear from the first episode that I'm doing that way. This isn't exactly what it used to be. It's unscripted now. That's why I put that in the title. It's going to be a lot more podcasty now. It's not going to be as polished as that show used to be, and I've explained already why I'm doing it that way at the moment. But I think, like, I thought I was going to get a ton of backlash about that, and I think if I had just called those Superhero Rewind and didn't address it up front, I would have. like, this is common sense to me, but I think some people just don't even think to state clearly what it is they're doing. Again, going back to Cinemassacre, that podcast is problematic that way. I think a lot of people that are complaining about it are expecting James and those guys to do less of the content they're wanting because they're pushing this podcast so hard. Like, is it supplemental material? Is it just this extra behind the scenes thing, the way they're talking about it? Or is it a replacement for rental reviews and that kind of thing? Nobody knows. They're not really telling us. They're just putting it out there. And so when people go, oh God, is this what you're making now? Yeah, I can see why they're saying that. But like, I don't mean to compare myself to other channels too much, but like when I started doing the Captain Logan show, it's not like I stopped doing reviews and things. And I don't know, and I'm not saying that they will, but like there's still AVGN and stuff, but like they haven't made it really clear. Are they gonna do anything else off the cuff, or like just that thing? And like it's not that great, so I could see why that's bugging people. It's like just communicate.
Yeah, when you've always had like the thing where Geekvolution has always been like you cover a lot of stuff, like even early on. So I think that's also like really helped you for being able to jump into different stuff. Like just, hey, this week we're gonna randomly watch Clifford.
We can get away with that in a way that a channel like Cinemassacre probably couldn't as well. It also helps that we don't have 2 million subscribers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like Cinemassacre, they had like AVGN, Board James, which is, like the board game equivalent, if you will. Like obviously it goes a little bit different later on, but that's the basic premise. And then you get like Mike and James and like those friends hanging out, but it's not exactly podcasty. So what they're doing now is a little bit different than what they've ever really done. At least from what I've seen, more Cinemassacre stuff than I do.
Yeah, and I think it's like the only channel, one of the only channels I really follow. I think it's also important to note that it's not like James has never done decent off-the-cuff stuff before. He's
for sure.
Admittedly, and has come out and said this, and it is good that he communicates about this, he is not super comfortable with it. He is a closeted introvert. He thinks that he's better scripted, and he would prefer not to have to go off the cuff, but to talk about all the things that he wants to. I mean, I have this too. There's only so much time in the day. It's like, you don't want quantity over quality. Again, YouTube is kind of forcing us to do that to some degree. You don't want just quantity over quality. At the same time, there's all kinds of stuff that I would like to weigh in on in some way that I can't unless I just get in front of a camera and talk about it. And I personally was also very nervous and uncomfortable and apprehensive about doing this kind of thing for the longest time, at least especially with like reviews and things. And after a while, I started getting a lot of comments from people that would just say, Cap, not everything you make has to be art. I just want to know what you think about it. Like, just let me, I'm just curious. Just let me know what you think about it. And I'm like, I guess I don't have to be a perfectionist anymore. So that's a lot of the reason that I've gone more that way, and Rolf, I think, had that attitude too. And again, it just seems like he's not excited about some of the things that he's doing sometimes. But like, he didn't get that kind of backlash with James and Mike Mondays because, like you said, they have a rapport, and that's just a couple of guys hanging out and almost forgetting there's a camera there while they're playing a video game. I think that was really relaxing and cathartic for those guys. Even though a lot of people don't like the Screamwave guys, I don't think you saw this kind of backlash even from rental reviews, which seemed like a thing that James was kind of passionate about, at least to some degree. They're a little surface, and it's deserved that he got that reputation for too many like yas and ahas, where he just doesn't really have anything to add, so he acts like you're just listening to a one-sided private phone conversation. But there are some really fun ideas and opinions and things that get thrown out on that show. So I don't know. It's yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm a sponge, man. I start thinking about how other people that are making podcasts that I do think aren't great, and I start doing it just like that. I'm just like, Oh, there's gonna be dead air now. Let's go to some super chats. Bag is mentioning some things, so let's find out what he has to say. 49, I have no opinion, I suppose. I don't. Well, thanks for the super chat. I don't like Cinemassacre or AVGN, but I do like their podcast. It's all I watch from them personally. Bag is always the outlier.
Bag, why are your opinions always so wrong? You gave $5 to be wrong.
That's not fair. Although, if I gotta be honest with you, if you're not already a fan of those guys, or at least of Rolf, I'm not totally sure why you would even be listening to that podcast.
Yeah, that's actually something that's really interesting. Yeah, because I would think you would get into the podcast because you're already into the content that person makes. It's weird to jump straight there, but good on you, Baggy.
Unless what you're getting into is obviously guys that are just podcasting in the first place, because we've been primarily talking about like YouTube channels where they make a certain kind of content for a long time. They get people initiated, they get people maybe addicted to a certain kind of thing, and then all of a sudden, and we haven't talked at all about burnout. Very often this does, of course, come from people just getting tired of making the same thing all the time, even if they're great at it, even if you as a consumer, or as a viewer, I should say, don't feel like they've ever lost the edge or whatever. You don't know how the content creator is feeling about the things they're making. They might be really good at faking it. Like, it looks like I still have the same degree of excitement and passion about this, but I've just gotten so good at what I'm doing, you can't tell that I'm done. I'm burnt out. And so, and I think AVGN absolutely has that to some degree, and especially because he's farming out a lot of that now, where he's not even writing a lot of the scripts at this point. But we haven't talked much about people that just podcast in the first place. Like a Rogan, but also getting off YouTube, like podcast platforms, listening to things on Spotify or Anchor or wherever you're listening to podcasts. There's a lot of guys that are real successful with just talking into a microphone, usually about a particular kind of topic. And I found myself really grimacing the first few times I saw the podcasts are just lazy content argument, because I'm like, I listen to some podcasts that work real hard at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's like anything, right? Like, you have people who are good, people who aren't, and then a lot of mediocrity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but very often, how much of it is that they really should be scripted, or they should be more I don't know, planned out or whatever, and how much of it is just they're not good at it. It's just...
Yeah, well, I think because podcasts are so easy to make, you do get a lot of people that just go, yeah, I can do that, and then they just jump into doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but should you have?
What you're really learning is just it's a skill like anything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Figuring out the rhythm of it, figuring out how to stay on topic, keep the thing interesting. Although there are podcasts that I've listened to that don't stay on topic, and that's part of what's fun about them.
Yeah. Yeah, like some shows, they go on crazy tangents, and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm here for. Not everybody can juggle knives, is basically the moral.
I think Loosey Goosey is a style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the Genesis Gems guys who I've had on the Captain Logan show several times. Their podcast, and they have a format, and they do have a specific plan, but they have segments of that show that will go on for 45 minutes that have, at the end of the day, nothing to do with Sega. And they don't get like... They don't get too horribly personal, but they'll get into, like their own lives and things. And if you like them, you get mixed up in that. You get interested in that. They start to feel like, friends that don't know you. That's why eventually I felt the need to hit them up and try to get them on my show and get to know them, because I liked those guys. And I'm friends with both of them now. And so I don't know, like, I get the allure of that. I feel like YouTube and podcasting is where like real reality TV actually is. reality TV was never real, and a lot of reality YouTube isn't real either. Like you have clearly, obviously faked stuff, but people that just sit down and chat, uh, sometimes that stuff is actually closer to the reality TV that you were hoping you were getting in the mid 2000s. That was nothing of the kind. But I also think that uh, you got to be careful not to get boring. You got to know what kinds of things are appropriate for your audience and what aren't. You know, when you get too much into what I had for breakfast this morning, like after a while, like it gets, I think, pretty clear, and it's different with different audiences maybe, but like what people really want to listen to and what is just going to bore them to tears.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I've tried doing the podcast thing. I think I have like three first podcast episodes, and I'm pretty sure they're all terrible.
Were you by yourself?
No, like I got like a group together. We're like, here we go. We're gonna make it happen. I don't know. I've tried a few times jumping into stuff like that and reviews, and I don't know. I can just never make it work for myself.
What's difficult about it? Do you feel? Like,
Um,
is it landing on a style? Is it the rhythm of it?
yeah, like maybe some of that. Because I have tried like just jumping straight in and doing more like improvised podcast, and reviews or like more written, for both. And with reviews, I find it's like too awkward to just sit in a room by yourself and just talk at a camera. I have like so much more respect for you now trying to do that.
It took
Um,
me. Well, I appreciate that. It took me so long to get even 3% comfortable with that, and I think that's where I am now. Is about 3% comfortable.
yeah. And I think too, like, obviously I have a very small audience. I only have like 270 subscribers, but like my watch time is usually like 50-60%. Like it's normally like pretty solid, I
Yeah,
think.
that's pretty good.
Um, but then I'll try to do like a review and it'll drop down to like 10, and it's like clearly like the people who are watching don't care.
You didn't bait them with your hook.
Exactly.
It's tough.
Hmm.
And
Podcast was like one.
it's easy if you look at the, and I'm not telling you not to, but it's easy when you look at the analytics like that, to get self-conscious and to make assumptions about why, right?
Hmm.
Like, just because your watch times aren't where you want them to be doesn't mean that your video necessarily is terrible. It could just be that the people that don't know your channel, that were looking for a review about that, didn't want the kind of review that you were making.
Hmm. And especially when you're so small too. Like, I was preparing for No Time to Die. I was like, I'm gonna review every Bond film, like one every day. I did three of them, and I was like, nobody cares, and I stopped. But but like the first one got like 40 views, which is pretty low for my channel typically. I mean, I was off because of COVID, so like I've definitely had like a drop in viewership since I've come back. But and then like the second one I think was like 10. So it's like, yeah, this just isn't worth my time.
That's understandable. And of course, that can be really discouraging.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm used to getting kicked in the head.
Thomas Lowe puts in a super chat. The thing about Eric is that he has ideas about what he wants to say and he articulates it well. This leads me to another point I wanted to make earlier. I'm glad that you said that. Although you probably said it about when I should have made this point, because that was a while back. I think there's also different kinds of preparation. So it's easy to be an armchair critic of armchair critics and go, well, you're not working from bullet points. You didn't write everything you wanted to say down. You must not have a plan. But it is possible for a person like Eric, who is so articulate, to do a lot of preparation and rehearsal in his head. And if a person like that sticks too much to a script or to an outline, it can get really stilted and doesn't end up being the product that brought people there and created an audience in the first place. I have found myself doing that so much more in recent years when I do off the cuff reviews, where I'm just practicing what I'm gonna say, or like thinking, noodling stuff out in the shower when I'm cleaning my house. I'll have conversations with people where I'm sort of like practicing what the video might be like. I had an hour-long conversation with DJ last night about this topic.
Oh, cool.
Finding myself kind of just getting my thoughts together. I wasn't even sure, where I was gonna land or what I was gonna come to this topic with. And as DJ and I were talking, I was like, oh, this is my opinion. Okay. And again, sometimes that works out fine, just sitting down, trying to tackle a thing in the first place. But, obviously, if you spend a little bit of time getting your thoughts together, coming up with some ideas, it can, and you come with at least, some things a little bit more ready to articulate, you might be able to evolve the conversation in even more interesting ways where it doesn't take you 10 minutes to come to the thing, to certain things in the first place. And so that's a lot more of the kind of preparation I find myself doing these days for things like the unscripted rewinds and things like that. But some people also have the skill of being able to like plan a video on the fly as you're going to organize as you go, and that's a thing that you just have to practice and cultivate over time. Where like, when I started, I tended to come to videos with a lot more, bullet pointed outlines and a lot of notes about it. Like, when we were doing Primetime Crisis, I would come with ridiculous amount of notes on every episode of a show I was watching. And part of the reason, I'm not doing that show anymore, but part of the reason, if I'm doing that kind of review, that I don't do that as much with something like, the Arrowverse and things like that, is I found that a lot of TV just doesn't deserve the sort of scrutiny that I was doing, where it was just kind of melting my brain, and I was kind of giving those things a little bit too much credit. It was a little too scholarly, and so I've learned to loosen up a little bit. And some of it was a little too scholarly for that material, and it was also a little bit too scholarly, I think, for the audience, where it just wasn't as interesting as I thought it was sometimes. But yeah, so just different ways of preparing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's been my history with Geekvolution so far. Like, you go back to, it was like the second video we did together, the Terminator commentary. I watched that movie 3 times in preparation for that, and had like jokes and stuff and insights planned for like every moment of that film, because I was like, I don't know what I have to come into this with. Now I just wing it.
Well, then you get more comfortable when you build, especially when you're working with the same co-host a lot, and you build a rapport, and you have a sense of being able to build off of what another person says. You get used to the rhythm of the conversation, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's daunting the first time you go into a video with anybody of a different format. Because you and I, before that, had shot a few things, like, gameplay videos and stuff like that. But if you've never done a commentary, like, I've had people that I bring into first-time commentaries complain that I didn't prepare them. And I'm like, I don't know what I would have said. The first time, like with so many things, is always really awkward, because commentaries are all about filling 2 hours with something interesting. Like, you can't have I guess you sort of could if you had nothing else to do that week, but like, it's commentaries are supposed to be freeform. That's what people enjoy about them. And even like from people that make the movie and are then giving a commentary about it, like, those things are never super planned out, or very often they're not, and people don't really want that. They want to see the creator of a thing respond in the moment. Oh, that's right, this thing happened, and here's how we did that. It's more fun because it's not structured. And so when you're just a couple of fans of a thing, trying to bring some insights or some riffing or just have a loose conversation while you're watching a thing that's basically a podcast simultaneously as it's a commentary, I don't think it makes sense to do too much preparation or to tell. Like, my preparation is I watched the movie again and I had thoughts about it while I was watching it, and sometimes I'll jot some things here and there down that I want to make sure and say, oh, that's a good line, that'll be really amusing if I say that at some point, you write that down. But when I like the first time I brought you in for a Terminator commentary, I don't want to tell a person too much about how they should be preparing, because I find that tends to make people even more nervous. There's a standard, there's a particular way you have to do this. Now you got to find your own voice, you got to find your own way of doing it, and then you got to figure out a way to make that gel with the thing I'm doing. And like, you have to be kind of, with things like commentaries, you have to be a little bit selective about what kinds of people you bring in. You got to figure out if you have a rapport with them. I keep saying rapport. I think that's really important.
Yeah. But yeah, no, when we did Terminator, it was like the first time, okay, rewatched it. Second time, think about like what I'm saying during it, and then the third time basically just perform it by myself.
Wow.
And then go into it.
Did you really do that?
Yeah, I was like, I knew.
You would practice a commentary.
Yeah, no, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing for this. Like, it was only for that one, but yeah.
I see why you abandoned that whole idea, because I am notorious for talking over co-hosts. I feel terrible now. I'm sure you had all kinds of really interesting things planned out where you're like, he is still talking over this scene.
No, I got like a lot of it in there. Even just like random stuff that I probably shouldn't have. Like, I have like this random like Canadian dry joke that just slip in there that I had ready from the first time I watched it.
One thing doing things off the cuff that I find challenging is to go back and forth. I don't know how much this has to do with the topic, but I find I find it difficult sometimes to go back and forth between solo unscripted and co-host unscripted, because you get really used to having to fill all the time all by yourself, which is why it's easy to accidentally talk over another person, because you come in prepared, or at least semi-prepared, where you're like, okay, I've got these things I want to make sure and hit at some point, and then you invited another person to help you fill in and to bring in their own unique perspective and to bring up some things you might not think to bring up. And then as you go along, you're glad that they're there and doing that, but simultaneously you're stepping on my pre-planned out thing, where it's like, okay, well, you could have just sat down and made the thing all by yourself, but you invited this person, and it's really easy to forget that I'm not by myself because I've gotten so used to having to make things all alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the opposite of me, where I'm by myself and I'm like, hey guys, this is I'm gonna talk about this thing.
Do you find yourself getting really nervous with that? Or is it less nerves and more just, this is awkward, there's no one here?
A bit of both, and I don't know, I can't listen back to myself. Like, I've never watched any video that we've made together, just because I can't hear myself, like, just talking about stuff. Like, I can watch myself do something stupid for, like, a random skit on YouTube. Can't watch myself talk about anything.
So can I give you a piece of advice, like right here in front of God and everyone?
A Clockwork Orange it, where I just make myself watch every video we've ever done.
Yeah, find a way to force yourself to do that, to get used to listening to yourself. It will be painful for a few videos, and after a while you'll just get used to listening to the cut of your own jib, and you will improve doing that.
Yeah.
It's been so important for me.
Well, and in the moment too, I get very caught up with myself, and like, I'm maybe taking a breath here, like, I'm like uh losing my point or stuttering, whatever, and it feels like the moment just like comes to a complete like stall.
Yeah. And that's the reason you want to go back and listen to yourself to get a sense of what of how time functions in a video versus how time functions while you're making it, because this is a lot like space travel, where the amount of time that it actually takes is different from what it feels like. um it's really interesting. You step into a vortex when you do this
Which why
job.
we always go over time on request.
Yeah. I mean, we've been at this for 55 minutes, and I would
Oh
not
my
be
God.
surprised. Yeah. And I would not be surprised if there weren't comments later that are like, I can't believe you guys wasted so much time on this topic. You didn't get anywhere. You didn't say anything. And I mean, I think we hit some points. I think we got some hopefully interesting things in here, but I could see some people listening to this back and go like, um, they spent a really long time on this. It hasn't felt that way to me. I feel like I've been sitting here for 15, 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
what I'm talking about is perception of time. And in the moment, as you were talking about, you'll get really concerned about dead air. And I mean, you should think about dead air. The point is to, like a radio show, not have too much of that. You want to make sure that there's always something for a person to listen to. You're creating content. You hope you're not just filling time, but sometimes you do have to stumble for a few seconds to get back on track. It's much better than just going. And I won't name names, but I've had a couple people here and there that aren't used to broadcasting that will come in and sit down with me and do that. And it's so difficult not to step on them. It's so difficult not to jump in, and like they're in the middle of a thought, and I'm like, okay, but you've been collecting your thoughts for 15 straight seconds, and people are leaving. Like,
Mhm.
we can't have that. But if you go back and listen to yourself, Austin, you will find that those chasms are never as wide as they feel in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, it always you get like self-conscious about it, and your world's coming to a end in the middle of your sentence. And I think part of it with me is I've never had to edit my stuff. Like I've edited a few videos here and there, but I'm an abysmal editor. Uh, So like my friend does all my editing, so I don't have to listen to myself when I record stuff.
Oh, that's good. I thought about seeing if you wanted me to hire you to do that job at one point, so I'm glad to know that you're not the guy to go to for that.
Well, you gave me like two videos to edit, and I'm like still just like like I need to get on that.
Well, and
I'm
that
so
wasn't even
busy too.
really an editing job so much as just clipping off the front and the back of something.
No, no, even before that, you gave me two videos to edit.
Oh, to like actually, I did. That's true. It's been so long, I completely forgot I asked you to do that. I've moved on and decided that yeah, but those I wasn't even necessarily expecting you to cut too much content out of.
Hmm. Yeah,
So like that job is more just putting in some screenshots.
I need to get to that though. I don't know. I've just been so busy, but like
We'll talk about it. It's fine. I completely understand. Um,
you're turning red, you're angry.
do the thing. Nah, I just wish I had more time in my day.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm not even as crazy busy as you are.
Back Studios. Maybe I do have an opinion. Oh, okay. He's come back with another super chat because he has opinions now. I've tried making a podcast a few times, not because I had a plan, but because I had time. My friends and I had a long drive, and we thought our conversations could be interesting. I've done this as well. So
Mhm.
we recorded it. It wasn't about lazy or not. It was the idea of if someone wants to listen to them.
Well, that's another thing is Dan started a podcast with us on the Patreon Discord. I think we have like six videos recorded, but I don't even think we have a channel set up or anything.
Oh, you've never posted them? I didn't know that.
I have two of them just like sitting on my computer that I gotta send to him.
And that's akin to, and I'm not saying that podcasting is necessarily art. I think some podcasts you can make the argument that they could count as art. It just depends on what it is and what the purpose is. But it's a little bit akin to making art for yourself, right? Where like, yeah, I'm gonna put it out there in case anybody wants to listen to it, but I really just made it for me.
Well, that was why Dan came
That
up with that
that
idea.
is
He
a
was basically
that is a
like,
valid reason to make a thing. And you could argue that it's self-indulgent and that, okay, you should just listen to it yourselves and not, try to force anybody else to look at it. But maybe there's something there. Maybe it is interesting. Maybe it is worth, somebody else looking at. It's all about intent.
yeah, absolutely. Because Dan was like, oh, we all like talk so much, anyways. Like, why don't we just record it? And like, people would probably find it interesting. And then I don't know, maybe someday they'll come out. We'll see. But the second video we made was a brand new, like 2 days after it came out, review for the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, and if you
Got
post it
that
now,
far
it'll be
back.
like, why did this never come out?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there is, and I'm glad I'm remembering this now because I wanted to make sure. Earlier, I wanted to get to this, and then we went off on some YouTube tangents. But I want to, or podcast tangents. But I also want to talk about what I think of as like legitimately vacuous content, because I'm of two minds about this. There are some things. So sometimes I can kind of see the argument of, well, if somebody wants to listen to it, isn't it justified to exist? And sometimes I feel like that's a cop out to justify, again, legitimately nothing, kind of vacuous content. And I try to keep an open mind because there is certainly a culture happening now with the generation past mine, with a lot of things that I just don't understand, that I don't get why anybody is watching. I don't fully understand watching other people play video games. But I mean, like I've done that occasionally, and if a person is interesting and fun and engaging, I can kind of watch that for 15 or 20 minutes. I can't watch a whole stream of one person. I mean, like I would do the equivalent of channel flipping, I think. I don't know if I could watch my own longer shows for as long as they go sometimes. You know what I mean? Especially live. Like I could see maybe going back and looking at them later or having them on in the background or something. I think a lot of people do that with streaming in general. And we should also note that streaming and YouTube video making, different things again. And some people again will be like, streaming, that's lazy content. Yeah, but it's different. It's different intents. It's different purposes. A person that just sits down in front of a camera and is talking to their audience and engaging and answering questions and just bouncing back and forth. If that person says, "I'm making art," I generally probably disagree with that. But if they're saying I'm making content, yeah, it's content. It's just different than, like polished, meticulously figured out videos in the first place.
I will disagree with you in that 30 years from now, in some sort of French art museum, that you will be able to find our Clifford stream just being played on the wall on like a little screen that's like this big.
There is sometimes a modern artness to some of what people are doing when they're streaming, I think.
Yeah, and I think like for you, for example, for streaming, the Captain Logan show, you've always kind of done the new stuff. Like you had the Captain's Log and stuff back in the day. You're just doing it live. Like this is basically a GNN topic. You're just doing it live.
Well, it's the reason I don't do GNNs anymore. I actually find this a lot more fun. Or the Captain Logan show a lot more fun. I mean, what we're doing right now is basically the old GNN podcast, and we're going, really long time on a single topic, and I haven't done that in a long time, so right now, there's a novelty to that. I'm really enjoying that. I like getting to jump around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to explore... I'm sorry, what was it?
So then we're going to end with rants.
It's not... Oh, I didn't prepare one. It's nice to... I missed those too. I should come back and start doing those again occasionally on the Captain Logan show. We've been getting so many questions lately. There's just too many questions. We've been getting so many questions lately.
That's a rant. You just had a rant. This too many questions in my show. Stop leaving super chats.
No, that's a good problem to have when the whole point of the show is I show up and you guys provide the foundation of the content.
Sorry, leave super chats, but don't write a question.
I just want your money. I don't know what this voice is, but I like it. I'm gonna keep doing it. Heavy smoker, I think, is the is the accent there. That's the preset. The preset is heavy smoker.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's like heavy smoker, like 40s filmmaker. That's mine. We're gonna be making pictures.
It's gonna be huge.
You're gonna be huge, kid.
So, but anyway, so I back to the topic at hand, vacuous content. So, again, like game streams, I've come around on a little bit. I've done one with Dan's News. He's really good at it. He's really great at like not getting horribly lost for hours on end in a game stream like I do. Like, he's decent enough at video games, but also can engage on a variety of topics, and he's just fun and silly, and it's just enjoyable to listen to and to interact with. But what I don't understand is a lot of these kids, and when I say kids, I mean, like, you know, late teens, early 20s, a lot of them. I'm 37. To me, like 22, you're a kid. In Austin's just getting out of childhood now. When I listen to, and I've only done this a few times, when I go find a kid like that does a reaction video, I don't get the appeal.
Reaction videos are the worst, yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't understand looking at a trailer, or even worse, an entire episode of television, and the whole point is to just see a person's initial facial responses, where they're not even providing any... And like I wouldn't expect commentary entirely necessarily on a first watch of a thing. I know I do that some, fully realizing that I might not completely be understanding the piece because I'm talking over it, but I'm giving you my initial reaction of, this looks weird, or I'm loving this, but I feel the need to articulate it out loud because I'm like making a product, right? I don't get just looking into a camera and going,
well, yeah, that's all it is it's like a, oh, what?
And that's not reality very often. That often
it's
is
very much played up,
super exaggerated, and going, you know, way to the nines. And I just don't see the point of it. Like, there's a lot of better places to go for bad acting. I don't get it. But also there's more subtle ones too. There's people who probably are legitimately giving you their real reactions, which is even less interesting. Because they're just like... I don't get it. I think, and obviously you couldn't monetize this, and this is why people don't do this, but wouldn't it be a lot more like constructive to just get in a Discord with a bunch of people? You're all looking at the same show and you just keep typing back and forth to each other. Like, I can see that. I get the purpose of a thing like that. We're also calling things reaction videos now that aren't, because the word react gets clicks in YouTube videos. So react now means like 19 different things. Have you noticed this? So you'll have these things where it's like, you know, lawyer reacts to this thing, or doctor reacts to this thing. And those can be useful and interesting and entertaining, and I get why people watch those, and I've watched some of those things where you get somebody that's a self-proclaimed expert on a thing, says, here is why in real life this is not what actually happens in surgery, or this isn't what really happens in a courtroom, or this is why that guy would have crashed that plane, says the professional pilot that's been a pilot for 10 years. Those aren't react videos, but they're called react. They're not reactions because the person clearly has seen the clip before and chose it on purpose to talk about. Right? It's not a reaction. Yeah. You're not reacting to it. You're looking at the thing and then giving a college lecture on it, which is legitimate, content. but I don't see how actual reaction videos are legitimate content. What I think they should be is a person turns on a camera and says, "I just looked at this thing. Let's talk about it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a more discussion. Yeah.
Because and even not necessarily discussion so much as just like, okay, for 3 minutes, I'm going to give you my immediate response. This might change tomorrow. I might not feel at all the way I feel right now. I think that's legitimate. I think that's interesting. I think there's reasons to. When I had more time, and when I was focused a little bit more on new than I am now, I used to do how we felt about and spoiler casts. And sometimes my opinions will have largely changed by the time I get to a spoiler cast. I think seeing the evolution of a person's feelings on something it can be interesting and worthwhile. And also just I think that's a good idea because it suggests to people that it's okay to allow your opinion to change, that you don't have to be locked into the first thing you said forever. It invites critical thinking and critical discussion.
No, all you have to do is you have a thought, that is your thought, and if you backtrack or slide, then you're a dirty politician.
Oh, I love it when I've gotten that criticism from people. Where occasionally somebody will be like, "Oh, Captain Logan's like a flip flopper." I'm like, "I'm not a politician."
He's flip flopping on this movie.
AMC, there's so many fake reactions though. Yeah, definitely. I think the reaction video is the way I alluded to this earlier, that a lot of newcomers are trying to break into content creating, where they're like, that's the big ticket thing now, and it doesn't take any preparation, it doesn't take any work, and the only time it works remotely is if you have a personality that people find fun and engaging. And you have a lot of people that are coming in that just, I'm sorry, don't, at least in the videos they're making, seem to really have that. It's just some dude going, "Oh yeah, that looks fun. I'm excited to see that."
Oh, Green Goblin is in this trailer.
Okay, and then there's this sometimes this kind of sense of entitlement that you should be clicking on this because I made it. And look how much effort I took because it exists. And that is kind of lazy. Sorry.
Yeah, just cut out the middleman and just watch the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess my whole point with this is just it is possible to make good content with minimal effort. It really is.
Well, the point at the end of the day is we both hate sauerkraut. And
exactly.
That's all we're really trying to say.
Shinkai, like to see reactions if it's funny, informative, bored, or you can't watch me. I'm not sure what that means. Bob the Hunt, after show reactions is a teenage girl who's never seen Buffy reacting to it. Yeah, that kind of thing can be fun. If you're really familiar with a thing and you're watching a person getting into it for the first time, where they're going, because you can kind of vicariously through them relive a thing, and that can be fun. And
like showing somebody something that you like.
Yeah, exactly. Or like as close as you can reliving what it was like seeing a thing for the first time. When you see it through their eyes where they go, "I have no idea what's coming yet. I'm making some speculation. I'm not liking this character right now. Oh, but you don't know what happens in season 4. You're going to love that character later." Like that can maybe be fun. If you really stick with it. But again, that person's, got to have an engaging personality. And they've got to probably not hem and haw too much.
Absolutely. What about cheese? Let's do a cheese reaction video.
I don't eat cheese anymore.
Nice Swiss.
It would be weird. I would have to just react to pictures of cheese.
That's what I mean. I don't mean eat cheese.
Oh.
I just mean just react to just seeing cheese.
It wouldn't even be snack. It would be picture of Snackvolution.
Well, react to a video of cheese ASMR.
ASMR was another thing I was going to bring up earlier too. where that's a dicey one for me, because it feels like content that kind of takes no effort and doesn't feel initially worthwhile to me, but then the purpose is kind of different. Like, if that's supposed to be in the background to relax you or whatever, you're not engaging with that the same way you do with with an informative podcast or an opinion podcast.
A lot of ASMR is just weird. Where it's like ASMR person scratching beard. And you just get that for an hour.
So I get the lazy content sentiment sometimes with certain things, but the idea that just, if you didn't know exactly what you were going to say before you sat down, I don't buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming from a person that has never felt like I'm particularly good off the cuff. I mean, I've spent more than a decade trying to get decent at this, because I always wanted to do both. I mean, like, I think one of the reasons maybe I've gotten away with it some, Austin, is because the same week, if memory serves, that we started Geekvolution back in 2009, we put out a rewind. I had like 2 or 3 rewinds, and then eventually we went to GNN. But like very early, weekly, it would be a rewind and a GNN. There was an off-the-cuff discussion thing, and there was a written analysis thing. And so if I suddenly am not doing as much written and I'm off the cuff, people have been used to me for years, talking with another person or talking, by myself at a camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's so much more of that now. You get more like, the comic vaults and like how we felt about and spoiler casts, all that different stuff.
But anyway, any final thoughts?
Yeah, uh-huh.
I feel like for a lot of different reasons, you were exactly the right person to have for this topic.
Thank you.
I needed a demonstration of the other side of this.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Really appreciate it. I don't think I missed any super chats. Thanks for the comments, folks. Oh wait, you know what?
I did. No, you did.
I did. Pardon me. Robert Wild, $2 super chat.
Money, not even. For shame, madam. For shame.
I'm still sick, but listening to you guys helps. Oh, I'm glad if we can make your day brighter. And sorry that you're not feeling well.
Mm-hmm. No, I hope you get better soon.
Schwaggers Lover, $2 super chat. Did you get my Patreon message about casting choices?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you got my Patreon message? How does that work?
You don't want to know.
I will check my Patreon messages later. I'm sorry, I haven't checked anything all day. I've been real busy. I think maybe he left that last night and said something to me about it, and I have not looked. I'm sorry, I have not looked at messages today at all.
Robert Wild, thoughts on Rocky IV director's cuts? We have no thoughts, so we won't talk about it.
We have a few thoughts, and we're going to make a separate video about that will come out in a couple of days. Thanks, Studios. One more super chat. Okay, here is a super chat with no question. Austin, happy now? Oh, heck, that was a question. And then it looks like he padded it out with a really lengthy ellipsis just to get it to $4.99.
Take that, bag. You just wasted your money, and now it's mine.
Happy now? Or, well, you should answer the question, though, since it was a super chat. Are you happy now?
I will never be happy.
I think there's some real truth to that. I mean...
Oh.
Everybody, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
We just got another super chat.
Okay. I will end the video here in a bit. Bob the Hun, once again, talking about the girl watching Buffy for the first time. Her reaction to Dawn is brilliant. Her content is really wholesome and genuine. Also, her reactions to emotional scenes is great. Cool. I am curious, actually, to check that out. Maybe I'm a big Buffy fan. I'm going to be doing something similar soon with anime. and I'm still kind of kicking around different ideas for format. The pilot I'm going to shoot on Death Note is going to be a kind of Q&A thing where I'm taking pre-written questions and letting anime fans on the channel direct the conversation, because I thought it would be fun to interact directly with people that actually knew their stuff on this and be like, okay, what do you guys think is important to talk about? Because if I just do like my general musings, I'm going to go to I'm going to try not to hold, obviously, Japanese entertainment too much to American standards. I'm a little bit concerned I'm going to go too far the other way, where I'm like not going to be especially critical because I'm like, well, the conventions are different. And like, that's just the answer for everything. I think that's weird. I don't understand why they made that call. If it was America, here's what I would say, but it's not. So I can't actually criticize it. And I think it's going to help me figure out what the standards and expectations from the audience that's aimed at is, if I'm responding directly to people that are fans of that. And I already got a bunch of questions from Death Note fans and some really insightful, cool ones, and I'm excited to do that video. I don't know how long it's going to be. I kind of wanted to make those shorter, just because I'm thinking that it could bring in a little bit of a new audience for us. Because that's becoming kind of a popular thing, and it sounds like a fun thing to me to do, which is why I want to do it. The kind of noob reviews of a thing as you watch them get more acclimated to a thing. I'm wondering how long I can do that show before I can't call myself a noob anymore, though. Where it's like, you have 35 videos on anime. Noob, reacts to this thing, or I don't want to say react. I don't know what they're going to be called yet. But if I do say react, they'll get views. So I don't know. I'm torn, but I don't want to do the clickbait thing.
Put them all in the title. Be like, non-anime fan noob watches Death Note, reaction gone wrong, gone sexual. I don't know what else. Just put everything in it.
That sounds like the that sounds like the Disney way to make that. YouTube video made by Reddit.
Yeah, and then your thumbnail can be just a picture of the Death Note with like the red circle and like the arrow. Oh, and you can be next to it going like,
yeah.
Perfect. It'll get 1 billion views.
I might go for just the so and so watches for the first time. That might be the way to do it. Because I don't want to be too clickbaity, but at the same time I want people to be able to find it. And just saying review now doesn't seem to cut the mustard anymore. So.
Oh, that's another one.
Like
Cops
I said,
were called, got doxxed, swatted.
Oh.
You can add to your title.
But then that would just be really misleading. I don't know how you flag videos for misleading content anymore, by the way, because everything on YouTube seems misleading now. Or that's how you get people to find you.
Can I tell you about the greatest
How can
video?
you be successful and have integrity? That's the thing I'm trying to figure out. Is how to still have some kind of personal integrity, but also do all the things that people are clearly needing to do in order to stay relevant and survive on YouTube. Because I'll get messages from people that'll be like, Cap, you're really not with the times. You're really out of touch now, and it's like. That's probably true to some degree, but there are things that I'm noticing that people are doing now where I'm just like, I feel like I'm selling out if I do that, or I should somehow be above that. And there's other things where I'm like, I finally cave and I just go, I guess you have to do that now.
Mm-hmm. Have I ever told you about the greatest tutorial video ever made?
No, go ahead.
So my dad he needed to change the light bulb in his ceiling fan. It was I think it was a light and a fan on it. And he was like, oh, I'll just YouTube it. So he finds the exact model in the thumbnail, and he's like, okay, here we go. And he clicks on the video, and the guy's like, hey, everyone, I'm going to teach you how to change the light bulb in this ceiling fan light. This is how you take the cover off. And it's just a simple thing. You basically just pinch it off. And he's like, that's how you do it? Oh, man, I've never seen this before in my life. I don't know how to change this light. Well, anyways, everybody, I showed you how to take the cover off, so that'll have to be it for today.
And he posted it? Why would you post that? Do some research, figure out how to do it, make your tutorial video. What are you doing?
No, it's the greatest video ever published.
That's amazing. One of my favorite things to do, you just reminded me of this, is to go onto eBay and type, I have no idea what this is. Because one time I did that and one item came up and I couldn't believe it. Like, that was the title. I'm like, that was the ad. And it was just some kind of like a wire. It was just a connector to something. And they didn't know what it was. They didn't know what it was for. They didn't know what it was. It was, it wasn't patch cords or anything, but it was pretty clearly, something for video. And I was like, you could say random video cord or like anything, but the title of the auction made it sound like literally it was impossible to even tell the basic foundation of what this thing is. It was just like, it was just some sort of cord, and I was like, what are you doing?
If you can leave comments, you should have just been like, I believe it's some sort of wire.
Well, and in the description, it was like, this is some sort of wire, and I'm like, why is it not in the title? I'm baffled by people sometimes. But yeah, I don't understand how the fan guy uploaded that video. That's crazy.
I'm so glad he did, though. My dad just sent me that. He was like, you gotta check this out.
Okay, well, at the risk of getting another super chat in the middle of this sentence, everybody, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate you. So last night in the Captain Logan show, I wasn't looking at a calendar when I said we'll be back next Thursday. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the States, so that will not be happening, of course, but we will see you again a week after that. So I may broadcast live some other day next week if I miraculously can find the time, but officially we're off next week for at least the Captain Logan show, but I will have a couple other videos up for you, I am sure. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Leave your comments, let us know what you think about this topic, if you have watched things and gone, wow, that was pretty lazy. They needed to put some more effort into that, and why? If it's because it's not of a person's usual caliber, or if there are legitimately things that you think are always lazy and should never be done, at least if a person has any kind of integrity and thinks that it's worth monetizing the video.
The number one comment on this video better be, this video is very lazy. It really puts the crap in Captain Logan.
Yes, I'm hoping I'm hoping that's the top comment as well. Anyway, we'll see you again next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.